Hello Year 10, this is our lesson today on humanist attitudes towards abortion. Before you complete the lesson though, please make sure that you have completed the Microsoft Forms quiz that's set on your assignment, and these are the questions here. For the last one, number 11, there are 2 possible correct answers. When you've done, press submit. It marks it automatically, sends it to me, and if you want to know your score, you can just press view results and it will tell you. That's my way of checking that you understand what we're doing. In addition, when I'm going to do whole class feedback in a few lessons, I will address any questions that lots of you have got wrong. You also have attached to this assignment a Cornell Notes page, which you're going to fill in. So I'll be pausing this video. I will also send you the original PowerPoint. I would pause this video at the end of each section to update your notes. So you put main ideas. This is your subheadings. So it could be the law, for example, the harm principle, utilitarianism. And then you put slightly more detailed notes. But don't write the world, they're supposed to be brief, and then a summary at the bottom. For topic, you could put life and death abortion, and for subject, you could put humanist views on abortion. So have those open and we will get started. So I have downloaded this PowerPoint from the Understanding Humanism website, which is a really good website, and they give resources for teachers and students to use. If you put into Google Understanding Humanism Abortion, you will find other resources. So it means that I am using the Humanist Association's own words to give you a humanist perspective, which to me seems like a good idea. I have added 2 extra pages and I will let you know where they appear. So let's start with the law. So since this has changed, since this PowerPoint was made, there has been a law change in Ireland, but to keep things simple, you can just talk about England, Scotland or Wales, or in this country. So in this country, abortion is permitted up to the 24th week of pregnancy. 2 doctors have to agree to that abortion, and they have to agree that carrying on with a pregnancy would cause significant physical or mental harm. A doctor has the right to not agree to an abortion on those grounds, but a woman then has the right to go and get a 2nd, 3rd, 4th opinion. If a doctor was a Roman Catholic, they are also excused from, if there were a Roman Catholic that was very anti-abortion, they would also have the right to say, no, I don't want to permit this abortion. But again, then the woman would have the right to get a different opinion. The law recognises that pregnancy and childbirth are in themselves risky. And so that's something that they would consider when a woman is seeking an abortion. And in this country, abortions can be carried out after 24 weeks if there is some kind of medical emergency, or if the child or mother is at risk of serious injury or disability or even death. The number of abortions carried out after 24 weeks is absolutely tiny. It's a very small number. In this country, most abortions happen before 12 weeks. So even between sort of 12 and 24 weeks, there are very few abortions, and they tend to be as a consequence of something coming to light in a scan at either 12 weeks or 20 weeks. So you might have a section, you might want to pause me now while you update your notes on the law and abortion. Humanists would want to look at medical facts when making a decision about abortion. They're not going to go to a holy scripture or a set of religious teachings. They're going to go to scientific evidence and medical facts. And these are the medical facts the Humanist Association are giving you. So the law chooses that an abortion can happen up until 24 weeks, because that was decided in the 1960s when the Abortion Act was passed. That was the point at which a fetus has got more chance of surviving than dying if it's born prematurely. So to really oversimplify, in the 1960s, a premature baby born at 24 weeks had a 51% chance of survival, whereas at 23 weeks it was 49%. So that was decided upon as the point of viability. Of course, it's important to point out that when babies are born prematurely, there is some kind of medical assistance through an incubator. They might have help with their breathing, for example. Something that is a current discussion is that as medical technology has advanced, babies are much more likely to survive at 22, 23 weeks. And so this point of viability is a shifting point. It doesn't remain the same. And so some people have argued for the abortion limit to be lowered to maybe 22 weeks to reflect the fact that more fetuses can survive, that maybe the point of viability now is 22 weeks, not 24. So, as the Humanist Association says, now very premature babies can be kept alive, much more so than was happening in the 1960s. But also, now, many disabilities and diseases can be diagnosed long before birth. And this can be done not just through invasive procedures like an amniocentesis, but through blood tests. And so from very early in a pregnancy, maybe 14 weeks or so, possibly even earlier, parents can know, or a couple or a woman could know very early that her fetus could have a serious life-limiting disability. And that might cause the number of abortions to increase. And finally, the Humanist Association wants to remind us that abortions can be performed safely with very few risks. And as I said on the previous slide, the risk of giving birth is higher than the risk of abortion, statistically, when you look at the general population. So again, you might have a bit on your Cornell notes page that says medical facts. Put me on pause and do that now. Gosh, my voice went all strange, didn't it? Now remember previously when we looked at humanist beliefs, we said to you that too many candidates just say a version of humanists don't believe in God, so they think abortion is okay. That is, the technical phrase for that is a pants answer. We don't do that at Litchit. You need to support your humanist views with ethical theories and talk through how humanists make decisions. So yes, they don't believe in God. Yes, they don't turn to the Bible, but there are other pieces of advice that help them make decisions. So you might, on your Cornell Notes page, have a heading that says how humanists make decisions. So they use empathy. So rather than just saying all abortion is wrong or abortion is great in every scenario, they would think about or put themselves in the shoes of the mother, the family, and maybe for some humanists, the fetus. How would they feel if this pregnancy went ahead? How would they feel if this abortion went ahead? They would use reason and evidence, and that's why we just looked at the medical evidence about abortion. They would also want to respect the dignity of each person. So making sure that person has a good quality of life. And that phrase, quality of life, is a key term for this unit. So it's living not just with happiness, but with opportunities. And a nice phrase to use is personal autonomy. So people have the freedom to make decisions. And so just repeat: empathy, putting yourself in the shoes of the person making the decision. Evidence, quality of life, autonomy. Put me on pause while you update your notes. We're just going to unpack in a little bit more detail those humanist perspectives. So you might want to use some of these as subheadings on your Cornell notes. So quality of life is important, and this is a key term for the Eduqas spec. So this could be a part A question, and so in that part A you might talk about humanism. And the Humanist Society would say we must think about what quality of life the woman will have if she goes ahead with this pregnancy or if she has an abortion. Is that going to be a happier, healthier, more fulfilling life? And they would also think about the potential quality of life for the child. If this is a fetus at risk of a serious disability, what will the child's quality of life be? If this is a child being born into a family that does not want it or is not able to care for it, what would the potential quality of life be? Humanists would say that a woman has rights over her own body. She has the ability to make decisions about her own body and whether she wants her own body to carry and give birth. And many humanists would say that the woman's rights take priority over those of the fetus, and that's a key difference between, in particular, a Roman Catholic view and a humanist view. And a humanist would say, and this is linked with the idea of freedom and autonomy, that a woman has the right to choose. I'm attempting to write here with my mouse very badly. It does look like the writing of my 4-year-old. I apologise. Humanists would usually take a pro-choice position. So the woman has the right to choose. Pro-choice is not the same as pro-abortion. It's the right to choose. It isn't automatically pro-abortion. Some religious people might criticise a humanist view by saying that they are playing God. Well, if you don't believe in God, playing God is meaningless anyway. But to counter that, a humanist would say, well, okay, if you believe in God, let's accept the fact that we play God all the time, whether that is giving vaccinations, putting people on life support, taking drugs. So we do play God when it suits us, when we think it's the right thing to do. So maybe we should play God to ensure quality of life. Maybe we should play God to give women the right to choose. But also, many humanists would say, well, I don't believe in God, so playing God is meaningless anyway. There's just nature. As we said on the previous slide, many humanists would say that there are fewer risks with an abortion than for statistically giving birth and being pregnant. Although, of course, many women do give birth and, are pregnant without problems. But when you look at statistics, the risk rates for pregnancy and giving birth are higher than for abortion. And humanists are not claiming that abortion is completely trouble-free. They would acknowledge that some women feel conflicted or have psychological suffering or maybe even some regrets after an abortion. But they would say that often that suffering and regrets and conflict would be much, much worse if a woman was forced to give birth and care for a child that she didn't want or wasn't able to care for. So this is all about empathy, isn't it? Empathy and thinking about consequences. And finally, humanists would say that if we make abortion illegal, we don't stop abortions, we just increase the number of unsafe or backstreet abortions, and so more women die. If you think back to the Church of England view, the General Synod did say that although they think there are too many abortions, that there should be legal abortion for those women that need it. Although they would say that the women who need it would be a much smaller number than the Humanist Society would acknowledge. So put me on pause, and you might have some sections now from here, i.e. playing God, risks, unsafe abortions, quality of life. Off you go. So now this is information that I have added. So this is the harm principle. I should have put this man's name on here and I forgot. This is John Stuart Mill. J.S. Mill will do. Although if you forget his name and you use the phrase harm principle, you're still giving a better answer than most GCSE candidates, and so you will do well. The harm principle basically states that we should be free to do as we want as long as we're not harming others. As simple as that. It sounds simple, but then Mill brings in that includes physical and mental harm. And then it starts to get a little bit more complicated, because what counts as physical and mental harm? But what's good about this is if you use the harm principle in a Part D, you can have those sort of debates, and that impresses the examiner. So firstly, the harm principle encourages humanists to be cautious about abortion, as they would be anyway. So not to leap straight to abortion is okay, but to consider the harm. The challenge here, though, is the harm to who? Because abortion certainly harms fetuses, but it could also minimise harm to the mother. You might also be weighing up different kinds of harm. Because yes, abortion harms, indeed ends the life of a fetus, but if they were going to be born in severe pain, perhaps it's the least harmful kind of harm, if that makes sense. So there's lots here that you can sort of tease out in a debate. And this is very similar to the law, isn't it? Because the law says that abortion can be permitted if it is preventing physical or mental harm. There's a typo there, that should say harm. So you might want to put me on pause and just add a few lines about Mill and the harm principle. This would immensely improve any Part D answer. This one, next one, is utilitarianism, which we looked at in our introduction. And utilitarianism is associated with Mill. I'm actually getting better at doing that, aren't I? Now I'm going to do a B, which is harder, and Bentham. If you can remember the names, that's great. If you can't, just mentioning utilitarianism will impress the examiner. And you may remember that utilitarianism is about minimising pain, so it's up here on the scales, maximising pleasure. So thinking about consequences. So this is an ethical framework that utilitarians could use. So when thinking about abortion, they wouldn't have a general rule, but they would say in each situation, what would minimise pain and increase happiness? So there is not one answer in every situation, but that is very much the humanist approach generally, that we're going to judge each situation. There is not one rule from God that we're going to apply. We're going to look at the evidence, we're going to empathise. The problem, of course, with this approach is similar to the harm principle and that's not surprising because it's Mill again, who is a utilitarian. Whose happiness and pain are you going to prioritise? And what if the thing that causes the least pain for the mother causes the most pain for the fetus? Again, this is good because you're using an ethical framework and you can tease it out and have all sorts of discussions. So if you include utilitarianism as a humanist approach to abortion, you are giving a cracking answer. So put me on pause, add utilitarianism to your Cornell notes. Now, this is Diane Monday, and you might not need to add anything to your notes necessarily from this unless you want to have a Diane Monday section. In Core PRE, we watched that Anne Robinson documentary, or I hope that you have, where she was discussing with a group of women, and there was one man, wasn't there, about their experiences of and attitudes to abortion. And this woman was featured. You might recognise this picture. And she was part of a campaign in the 1960s to legalise abortion. She spoke about how she had a private abortion, and she realised that many women would not have access to that, so they would have an unsafe backstreet abortion. But Diane very much represents the humanist view. And so first of all, she would say that, and this is linked with quality of life, that everybody, I'm going to attempt to write quality of life badly there, everybody, and that includes babies, especially babies, have the right to be wanted, loved and nurtured. And if a baby is born that is unwanted, or the mother is unable to care for it, or the wider family, is that baby going to have the best start in life? Is it going to feel wanted, loved and nurtured? And so that should be something you consider when you're making a decision about abortion. She would say abortions, legal abortions, can be performed safely. And although some women might have regrets about abortion, and Diana thinks that she has no regrets, but the Humanist Association and Diane would say that there are fewer regrets about abortion than having an unwanted child. Many Christians would disagree with that, and they would say that abortions do cause depression, stress and huge lifelong regrets. Diane disagrees. And then finally, she makes the point that we live in a world that's overpopulated. And so we might look back in time with sort of utter amazement at the time when we were living where there were too many people and yet we were making women have babies they didn't want. And I thought to myself, look at the key term I'm writing very badly, I might link this with the idea of stewardship. And so if you're being a good steward, are you having a huge number of children? Or are you limiting the size of your family? Now, Christians would disagree with the concept of abortion as a form of contraception, as would humanists, to be honest. But humanists would certainly say, why are we forcing women to have babies they don't want to have when the world is overpopulated? It is a counter-argument that you could use in a part D to the Christian view of Genesis, of go forth and procreate, and natural law and a primary precept of reproduce. Is that still what we should be doing in a world that is overpopulated? So, if you're going to use any of this, put me on pause and add it to your notes. I think this one about overpopulation is a really good counter argument to use because you can link it with the Christian concept of stewardship. And then finally, something to consider is when you're talking about abortion, When does a fetus become a person, and when does it have rights? These were questions that you asked yourselves in Core RE. So, if you're someone that thinks that a fetus is a person and has rights very early here, so a Roman Catholic view, you're likely to be anti-abortion and you're likely to be pro-life. This fits in, doesn't it, with some of those Bible passages. So knitted in your mother's womb, I knew you before you were born. People who are pro-choice tend to come down here, and they would say a fetus only has rights when it's born. And those people are much more likely to be pro-choice. And some people might go further and say you don't become a person with rights when you're born. That happens when you have consciousness, when you're able to feel and you're aware of who you are and aware of the world around you. In the next lesson, we're going to have a look at this idea and a philosopher who's one of my favourites called Peter Singer, who is the utilitarian that is named, look how awful that is, who is named on the GCSE spec. So just a reminder, you are submitting in your Cornell notes and you're completing your Microsoft Teams quiz. I will see you next lesson when we will look at Peter Singer and abortion. Thank you very much, Year 10.